All right. Anybody been on Duolingo recently? Nobody? I want to know who is trying to learn a language. Al has. All right. Awesome. You know, when you first get on to learn a language, or you try to learn it in an app or whatever, when I do anyways, I get on Duolingo, and at first, now I had some Spanish in high school. At first, it would tell me, okay, que hora es? What does that mean? And I'd have to think actively, like, what does that mean, right? Okay, I would say, what time is it, right? But that's not how this Spanish language says it. They say, que hora es, right? So I have to think about that. I have to think, okay, here is this, right? And then if I want to translate it, if I want to figure out how to say it, I have to think actively. The same is true in pickleball. Anybody play pickleball? We talked about it a little bit, right? You play pickleball, right? Yeah, you just got. And so I like to play. In my past, I've played tennis and ping pong, and I'm pretty proficient at those. So I'm like, it's pickleball, and it's a bunch of people who probably are older than me. I'm just saying, this can't be difficult, right? Like this will be easy. And so immediately, what would happen is I would play, and I would get right up in the net, and those people would be like, a point for us. I'm like, what are you doing? You can't be in that place. It's called the kitchen. Well, I'm like 6'3", and as I've said before, you're like 4'8", okay? So that takes an advantage right off out of the gate that I wanted. So I have to now think, and I thought for like a long time, okay, I can't go past the kitchen. But it's something I actively have to think about. And the problem is, I have an original way of thinking that I've thought about for so long, right? You kind of just do things. If it's a skill that maybe you spoke in a language growing up, right? And that's just something you do without even thinking. And then when you want to learn something new, you have to think differently. And at first, it's very difficult. Like, okay, this is the way, and all that. I have to get to a place where in Spanish, I think in Spanish. Or in paddleball, I'm not playing, or pickleball, rather, I'm not playing tennis, so I can't go up. So I have to begin thinking this way. Now, have you ever struggled with trying to make sense of all the rules of following Jesus? Right? And once again, I don't mean the ones that maybe some of us grew up with, where, you don't go to that movie or this movie, or you have your hair a certain length, or I don't mean those rules. I mean, okay, we like to say, love everybody, right? And everybody says that. Just love everybody. And all of us would say, yeah, well, that's right in theory. But even the people who say love everybody don't love everybody. You know what I mean? And then Jesus turns it around and says this: what I want you to do is love your enemies. And I'm like, well, I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about all that. And all of us, I want you to think really hard. Think about an enemy right now. Somebody in your class, at your work, sitting next to you, hitting whatever. I think we just got that up in the room. Sitting next to you, apparently. Somebody who's your enemy, who you are supposed to love, Jesus says. And your natural way of doing things is to say, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and despise that person, but I'll love them from over here. That's our natural way, right? The natural way. And as a matter of fact, the only way to really begin to have the mindset of Jesus, because that's where we're going. The mindset of a follower of Jesus is to repeat the Jesus way over and over and over again. Because I got to tell you this about me, and it's probably true about you. I have the Marty way down pretty well. You have the Dan way down really well. Right? I mean, the Megan way, nobody has it better than you. Right? Or some of you are praying, please God, don't let them say, hey, right? We have our way down really, really well. And what we're supposed to do, if we want to have the mindset of Christ, we have to begin to say, okay, well, I need to repeat this Jesus way over and over and over and over and over again. So my natural way is to hate my enemies. Here's my enemy. Now, the Jesus way is I have to love him or her. I have no idea. Now, we're Americans. We have amazing justifications as to why we should not do that and cannot do that, right? Like, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And I can't do it from way over here. The psychology of it says, and Jesus says, listen, I want you to follow my footsteps. And so however you get to that point, you're called to do that. Whew. Really? The natural way is to take, keep, hoard. This is mine. I don't have enough. The Jesus way is to give, and then to sacrificially give. Right? So, Peter, as we've talked about, he really, really struggled with this. Unlike us. Like, we have this down. But Peter, he struggled with so many things. We've been going through this series called A Whole New World. We're talking about this idea of stepping into following Jesus and how it's very much like a culture of, if we're called to learn a new language. It's like a new language. And so, Peter, first of all, in order to learn a new language, you have to say yes. I want to do this. I'm going to do this, right? You have to say, I'm going to take that step, right? And so following Jesus, many of us have said, not all of us, and that's okay, many of us have said, I'm going to step into saying yes to Jesus. Peter, he said yes, and then things got rough. You know what I mean? And then things became difficult. So, as a matter of fact, there's that one story, and actually I'm going to skip that because of time. And then last week, we talked about how Peter had these great ideas. And many of us have these great ideas when we become Christians, and our old church did this, and we have this, and I told you about all the ideas that I have had in my history. Many of them are bad. And in the Mount of Transfiguration, where Moses and Elijah kind of came with Jesus, and there's this great thing, and Peter said, I have a great idea, let's do this. And then a voice came down, just called to Peter and said, hey, I want you to listen to my son. Right? And so one of the best ways that we can follow after the culture of Jesus is to listen. Act in small ways, listen in big ways, follow the Jesus way. Now today, I want to tell you one of the saddest stories in the New Testament. It stars Peter again. Okay? Peter, he was one of Jesus' followers, close followers. He loved Jesus. Jesus loved him. And at the end, Jesus told him, you are going to deny me 3 times. Peter said, in Peter fashion, I'm not going to do that. I would never do that. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going all the way. I got your back. And so he did literally fight for Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. He tried to cut off some guy's ear, right? And Jesus said, no. That's not how this battle is going to be fought. And here's the interesting thing. Many of us don't know how to fight a battle while following Jesus. So Peter then goes to Jesus and he says, hey, here's what I want you to do. No, he didn't say, he goes to a place where people were kind of talking about what was going on. Jesus was arrested. And Peter says to Jesus, or Peter says, they asked him, hey, are you going, do you know him? Are you a servant of his? And Peter was like, no, I'm not. Then it happened again. Hey, are you a servant of that Jesus who's arrested? No, I'm not. Hey, are you a servant of the so-called Messiah? No, I'm not. And just then, the rooster crowed. And Peter was in that place that so many of us have been in, where we failed, where we screwed up, where we sinned. We did whatever you want to call it. That's what Peter did. And then Jesus dies. What we find is that he's in the tomb, and Mary finds Jesus risen, right? We've celebrated this. Mary goes back to tell the disciples, and Peter and John run back. John was a little faster. He was sure to tell us this in the Gospels. And Peter gets there, and I can only imagine what Peter was thinking when he saw Jesus. Oh, crud. I screwed this one up really, really bad. He's going to hate me. He sees Jesus a couple times. Maybe he was standoffish. And then there's a story in John chapter 21. It's this beautiful story where Peter says this, I'm going fishing. I'm going fishing. Which is interesting because Peter decides to go back to his old ways. That's what Jesus called him from. It's not even that fishing is a bad thing. It's just that Jesus called him from that to follow him in this particular way. He says, I'm going fishing. You guys coming? Because he was a leader, they followed. And then Jesus shows up at the beach. And the story is amazing. Because they don't at first know it's him. They're trying to figure it out. And this guy calls out and says, if you can't do the fish, move your nets over to the other side of the boat. Because this happened before. And they did, and fish piled in. As a matter of fact, John tells us 153 fish. Matthew must have helped them with that. And they realize it's Jesus. And Peter gets out of the boat and he runs, whatever he does. He gets to Jesus. But you got to know this is a weird dynamic. Right? He doesn't know what to do. I failed him. I've seen him. But now here we are and it feels like it's towards the end. I don't know what's going on. And Jesus, interesting, he begins to make breakfast. He makes breakfast for the fishermen. Right? So he's not reminding Peter of his sin. He's reminding him of his calling. You went back to fish, which is fine, but remember, I called you from that to follow me. And so many times we think, Jesus, I'm reminded so much of my sin. Listen, what's more important is that you're reminded of your calling, is that you have a calling in your life. And that any time you move away from that calling, it's a sin. And here's why, because sin means what? It's a term that means missing the mark. And God has a calling on your life, whatever that is. It's different for you than me. So he has breakfast, and after breakfast, Jesus asks Simon Peter, Simon, son of Joseph, do you love me more than these? Can I get those verses up here? Do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said. You know I love you. Then take care of my sheep. A third time he asked Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because he was sensitive. Some of the most outrageous people are. Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. And I've heard all sorts of good reasons why Jesus repeated this. Peter denied him 3 times. But I like to think that Jesus was into teaching. And any good teacher is very repetitive at times, so that we can remember. And he needed Peter, who was the leader. Wasn't even trying to rap there. Just natural. He needed Peter, who was the leader, to remember and get this, his calling. And he repeats, and I can only think, he says, do you love me? Yes, feed my sheep. Do you love me? Yes, feed my sheep. Do you love me? Yes, feed my sheep. Over and over and over. And then, years later, as a seasoned minister and follower of Jesus, Peter writes to another group of people. And he tells this group of people who are new believers out in the Roman Empire. He says, this is what I want you to do. Prepare your minds for action and exercise self-control. How many know that in order to prepare your minds for action and exercise self-control, you have to make that junk a habit? Because if you've already made not exercising self-control a habit, then only one way to get that is that's repeating that junk. Put all your hope in the gracious salvation that will come to you when Jesus Christ is revealed to the world. And then Peter, probably thinking back to when he had denied Jesus and screwed up so many times. So, you must live as God's obedient children. Don't slip back into your old ways of living to satisfy your own desires. Trust me, I know, Peter would say. You didn't, and this is such an important line, you didn't know any better back then. Because Peter didn't. Well, I'm with Jesus. We're going to do this thing. We're going to take our swords and bring in the kingdom. And Jesus, no. You don't know any better. You keep slipping back into your own old ways of living to satisfy your own desires. So how do we prepare our minds for action and exercise self-control? Well, one way we do this is to repeat righteousness. Now, by righteousness, I mean God's way of what you're doing. What is God's way? God's way for your life. What is his calling for your life? Repeat that over and over and over and over again. What is what he's calling you to? If you're listening, like we talked about last week, you got to be ready and prepared. Repeat what God is calling you to. You know what he's not calling you to. He's not calling me to anger and bitterness. He's not calling me to gossip. He's not calling me to hate my enemy. He's not calling me to do all sorts of things that I naturally do. But when you figure out what God wants you to do, you have to repeat that over and over. It has to become your second nature. Because right now, possibly, your second nature is living the Marty way, or the Sherry way, or the Angela way, right? What is the way that you've been trained to do? Well, here's the thing. God is calling us to follow Jesus wants us to follow his way, and in doing so, the only way we can do it is to repeat that righteousness over and over and over and over again. And once you think you got it, then you lose it up here, you lose the mindset, you begin to slip back into the ways, you got to repeat it again. Well, I thought this Jesus thing was supposed to be perfect. Got news for you. You know it's not. It's hard. It's hard work. Repeat righteousness. And then here's another one. Repeat restoration. If you want to follow after Jesus, you have to begin to restore the things that are broken, the relationships that are broken, the sin around you that's broken. You restore it. And that only happens with self-giving love. Repeat restoration. There are relationships around you that are broken and dysfunctional, and it's your job as a follower of Jesus to help to restore those. This is kingdom work, guys. There are people in your world and in your life who are feuding for stupid reasons. Oh, see? At least one of you. Come on. So you can be a listening ear and just go, yeah, you should just destroy that person. That was stupid. Or you can work on kingdom restoration. And you can repeat restoring over and over and over and over and over again. As the slide says, you're a part of this new kingdom. You're trying to fill the world with the Jesus way. Right? Isn't that beautiful? It's awesome. But here's what happens if we're not careful. I'm not judging, because this is true of me as it's true of you. You can't be a part of the problem. Whew. That's heavy stuff. I joke around a lot about people when people say, I thought you were a Christian. Like people say that, and I'm like, yeah, well, take this. Right? Like I joke around. Like, I think that's an utterly ridiculous statement. But also, we can't be a part of the problem. We have to be a part of the healing. We're doing kingdom work. We're following Jesus in a kingdom way. And we all have different circles. And where there's a new language, there's a new culture. My son was playing soccer yesterday, and there was a couple families that had these beautiful outfits on. They were clearly from a different culture, and they were beautiful. They were awesome. Honestly, not what I would wear, but that's okay. But sometimes, in my past, what I've been taught, right? You ready for this? Is if you're following Jesus, you dress this way. Right? So, a shirt and a tie and a suit. I joke that I wore a suit every day until I was 23. Including school. But following Jesus does not necessarily make you build a culture. It's a culture changer. Okay? And the kingdoms of this world want you to look like them. Right? They want you to fit into where people's eyesight see you, and they want you to look like them. But the kingdom of God, Jesus wants you to follow him by having his mindset. You see the difference? People say all the time, well, I would have never guessed you're a pastor. That's awesome. Is it my 50 tattoos? Just kidding. Right. Like, it doesn't matter what you look like. What matters is your mindset that leads to kingdom building, that leads to kingdom change, where you're following the steps of Jesus. And what happens when we all begin to have this mindset is we change their mindset, and people around us begin to see this new kingdom and this new world where Jesus reigns, and they become free because of the good news of the gospel. I mean, have you ever considered, think about this, how radically weird this is. If you dress like me if you dress like me, listen to the music I listen to, you'll be a Jesus follower. No, that's utterly ridiculous. It's a heart thing. Your mindset changes, and when your mindset changes, when you don't slip back into your old ways of doing things, your mind begins to change, and then it changes your heart, and you're able to be soft enough to share that with the world. It's beautiful. That's why I always share the gospel. We should do that right now. What do you think? The gospel is the royal announcement that the crucified and risen Jesus rose again according to the scriptures, has been enthroned as the true Lord of the world. As a result of this, we are called to salvation out of sheer grace, leading others to repentance and faith in Jesus Christ as the risen Lord. You guys are almost there. Let's go. Let's go. But we're sharing this message, but then we live out that mindset and share it out into the world, right? In other words, all of us are going to screw up, right? I mean, how many screwed up this week? Wow, we have a really close to 100% rate here. We need to work on this church. But yes, of course, it's a beautiful thing. But we have 6 days to try again, to share Jesus, to broadcast his kingdom, not my kingdom, his world, not my world, his sacrifice, not my sacrifice. Let's do this, right? And it starts with a mindset. Repeat, right? Repeat righteousness, repeat restoration. God,